Hi, I'm Steve Hosher with RazorGage, and today I'm going to give you a brief explanation of how to set and level the RazorGage with the saw. A little bit about how to assemble the legs, just the general process in getting the table level and aligned with your saw table top and your saw fence. The very first thing you want to do is get the tabletop of the saw good and level. Get the saw where you want it, level the top side to side and front to back. Very important. Why? The reason is because let's say you've got a 30-foot table and this saw is off, not quite level. When you get 30 feet out to the end, our table is going to be going into the floor. So it's very important to level the saw first, get it where you want it, and then don't mess with it again once you start. So once you've got the saw good and level and at the height you want, the first thing you have to do is set the height of the legs. Now, this is our standard leg. It's in three pieces. We have the pan and then we have the sliders. You put one bolt through the slider into the nut that's welded on the outside, and that is how the slider mounts. There are slots and holes for more bolts. You don't need them, just a one bolt. You put the sliders on, put the leg up next to the table, and measure down 3 inches from the top of the table to the slider and lock it in. Now set your level across here and set the other slider to the same height. Now take all your legs and set them side by side with all the other sliders to the same height as this one, and now your legs are all set. You've got a nice, a rough level adjustment for the table, so it'll be close when you set it up, assuming your floor is somewhat level. The leveling bolts that go on the bottom of the leg, don't put those in. We're just going to set the legs so that they're sitting flat on the floor, and then we'll use those bolts, we'll put them in from the top to make our fine adjustments later. So, once you've got the legs all set, the next thing is you'll want to put the table attachment bracket on. Now the table attachment bracket, there are quite a few things that go into that process, so we're going to leave that. There's a document available on our website that goes through all the decisions and wherefores and whatnots you may have to consider when putting this bracket on. So we're going to, for the sake of brevity, we're going to just talk about alignment of the tables and leveling the tables, and we'll talk about this in a document that's available online. So once the table attachment bracket is on and you set the legs out out from the saw, you can set the table, one end on the table attachment bracket, the other end on the saw. The table straddle the legs and go and bolt into these slots. The leg on the end, then the table goes clear out to the end. So the middle legs, the tables straddle them. The end leg, the table is flush with the end. So once you've got the tables all assembled, and now they're somewhat level because we set our 3-inch from the tabletop saw top height, the next step, set the RazorGage on and get it close to being aligned. What you do is line the RazorGage face up with the fence and lock this end down. Measure it, then go down to the far end and do the same thing. After you've done that, you can put a string on. We use a shim. These are the shims that come with the RazorGage. You may be wondering what these are for. They're to space the RazorGage off the table. In this case we have rollers, and so the RazorGage has to be spaced up 1/4 of an inch for the rollers. Now if we have a PVC top, those spacers get the bottom of the RazorGage flush with that. So these are for spacing the RazorGage off the table. Here we're using them to shim the string out. So we've stretched the string from one end to the other. Now what you would do is go along and measure the distance from the RazorGage fence to the string all along the length of the RazorGage, and pry the RazorGage over and lock it in to get the RazorGage straight and parallel to the table. So once you have that done, the next step then is to level all the tables with the saw top. and our master assembler, who's running the video camera, has come up with a great way to do this. He takes his line level and sets it on the saw tabletop, puts a board against the razor gauge and makes a circle around the laser dot. You can see there. And then now what that does is gets our distance from the fence over, and it's got our distance from the tabletop up. So as we continue to go down the line, you can see the relationship of that dot and adjust the table either front to back or up and down along the way to get it all level, and then you're done. So that's a brief explanation of how to set and level the razor gauge tables and your saw in a pretty quick, efficient manner. Thanks a lot for your attention. I appreciate you listening, and give us a call if you have any questions. The number here is 515-232-3188, and our website is www.razorgage.com. Thanks a lot.